Good morning, everyone. My name is Gozim Ellen Onuga. I'll be your host today on this Thursday's live series. Of course, with the topic, the human rights implication of insecurity on vulnerable groups. Yes, so I'm going to be vulnerable groups. There are lots of vulnerable groups. There are so many, but for today's discussion, I'm going to streamline these groups into just four groups, and have us examine these implications around these groups that I'm going to mention. And these groups are: 1, children; 2, vulnerable women; 3, sexual minorities; and 4, persons with disabilities. We know that these people are usually or classified as persons who are poorer than some other persons in Nigeria. And we know that more than 70% of persons living in Nigeria are below average in terms of economic opportunities. And that is to say that more than 70% of what's in Nigeria are poor. And in this 70%, over 80% of these groups or persons are vulnerable, basically. So, like I said, we're going to analyze our topic using just these four groups. That is children, vulnerable women, sexual minorities, and persons with disabilities. And in analyzing this situation around these people, we are going to analyze them based on 4 different areas. These areas are: number 1, food and means of livelihood; secondly, shelter; thirdly, economic situation; and 4th, life/health. So, in speaking about food insecurity, not so much is known about who is food insecure and who is food secure. And not so much is known about food security. Oh, well, yes, so much is known about food security and food insecurity, but not so much is known about who is secure and insecure with regards to food. But if our analysis serves us right, if most of these people who are poor in Nigeria are vulnerable groups, then we can imagine that they will be highly food insecure. We know that, for instance, sexual minorities, they are taken as though they are not normal human beings. People do not like to render services that ordinarily a normal human being, in quotes, would be given, services that a normal human being, in quotes, would be given, because these people are seen or taken as though they are not normal human beings. Meanwhile, they are. So if we are looking at this in terms of food security, we would see that, judging by all that has happened in the last few years, down to the last few months, weeks, and last few days in Nigeria, we would see that a lot has happened to our food, and that would mean a lot has happened to our agriculture. Because Nigeria agriculture is said to be the most, the largest, the most significant way, or the biggest source of the national GDP, which are accounting for 40% of the national GDP and accounting for 70% of the means of employment for citizens of Nigeria. And if we have noticed, the richer people in Nigeria ordinarily do the corporate 9-to-5 job or other kinds of corporate jobs, while the people who are poor depend more on agriculture. And if these people who depend on agriculture do not have the right environment, the necessary things like equipment, farmland, to grow their crops and actually cultivate, we'll see that these people will be highly affected. We have seen the crisis in the northeastern parts of Nigeria and not central Nigeria, taking Benue State as a very huge example. Farmlands are destroyed, women and children who go to the farms are killed. You know, these have actually quite and significantly affected these vulnerable groups. And if we are also to leave the issue of food security to that of shelter, we would see that, with regards to this insecurity in Nigeria, vulnerable women and other vulnerable groups, as highlighted above, before I started this discussion, are really insecure. While the rich people can afford to live in more secure areas, because that is the case in Nigeria, where we see that some parts of Nigeria are more secure because of the kind of people that live there. And for some persons who are not able to afford some kind or amount of money to afford them to live in a certain area or certain areas of Nigeria, will end up living in slums, areas that are less secure. So these people get to encounter hoodlums, bandits, harass them, take the little they have, and just displace them. So if we are also to look at the aspect of IDP, we will see that the current estimate places the proportion of persons staying in host communities at 90%. And now this 90%, if we are to analyze it, who actually stay in IDP camps? Majority of these people are the vulnerable groups. They stay in IDP camps. So the issue of shelter is highly and really significantly affected, which of course affects these people and of course reduces the level of trust in the society. And if we are to move to issues of economic situation, we would see that vulnerable women, children, sexual minorities, persons with disabilities are less considered in issues of employment and issues of generally economic situation, issues that have to do with economy. So now, if these people are affected, persons with disabilities, I remember the last time we had meetings with them as to the effect of COVID-19 on them. It was really huge, and they made mention of the fact that unemployment was something that really affected them. That besides the fact that COVID-19 came with a lot of things, it also heightened the issue of poverty for them, because while there was no COVID-19, they were not employed. So while COVID-19 affected even those who were unemployment, these people who were not employed suffered worse. So we can see that these people are really suffering in terms of insecurity. So while people like us who feel we are not vulnerable or actually are not vulnerable are complaining, then you should just spare some thoughts for those who are vulnerable to see the level of complaint they are actually giving. So if we are talking about life, we have to divert to another area of interest, which is life and health. We'll see that vulnerable groups, like I said, when I give an instance with sexual minorities, I said that these people are ordinarily not given or are made to have the kind of services that other persons should be given. So I've heard or I've seen, because of the nature of my work, I've seen situations where someone goes to hospital for some sort of treatment, and doctors or hospital personnel leave what they were employed and trained to do to castigate these people, and eventually not agree or give them the kind of services that they require as human beings, as normal human beings just like us. So these people encounter this kind of problems. And of course, when your health is affected, and when your economic situation is affected, when shelter is affected, when you do not have food security and means of livelihood, definitely it would affect your life. And in all, these things violate and in total contradiction of the provisions of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, specifically on Articles 4, 12, 16, 18, 22, and 23. Thank you so much. I'll leave you with this and hope that you go to study these articles, the articles that I've mentioned, and of course, examine the whole, in a wider range, all these things that I've spoken about. Thank you. Thank you.